And welcome to another edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. Happy Friday to everybody. We have got a great show. This is presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. This is the Friday edition that you can catch on my Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just go ahead and like that Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge Facebook page and subscribe to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge YouTube channel. I have had over 921 episodes as I approach 1,000 episodes. We have got just a great show for you. Just a reminder that you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM on your dial. It's a Noonan station. So let's get right into just the games that have happened. I'm going to talk about week 8 in high school football. I'm going to preview the NFL, going to preview college football and the baseball playoffs as well. But we have got to talk about the Atlanta Falcons walk-off win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This has been the most exciting Thursday night game that I've ever witnessed. And what a win by the Atlanta Falcons. They are 3-2 overall, and they are in first place in the NFC South. This game had it all. Kirk Cousins, 509 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. And there was a point where I thought that Baker Mayfield was going to completely dissect that Falcons defense. He looked amazing. 3 touchdowns in the first half. Mike Evans was unstoppable, but the injuries were piling up for the Buccaneers. The Falcons put some pressure on Baker Mayfield in the second half. They made the adjustments. And I also think that the Buccaneers secondary was banged up and the Falcons took advantage. This has been by far Kirk Cousins' best game as an Atlanta Falcon. He breaks Matt Ryan's Falcons passing record, and Matt Ryan was being honored in the Ring of Honor at halftime. This was a huge win. Despite Younghoe Koo missing 2 field goals, one of them was blocked. He redeemed himself by kicking the game-tying field goal, a 52-yarder, to send it to overtime. The Falcons win the toss, and I knew once the Falcons won the toss, they were going to get the ball and they were going to score a touchdown. Kirk Cousins might have just interchanneled his Matt Hasselbeck because it was a done deal. There was a point in the game where the Falcons did go for it on 4th and 15, but they had all their timeouts left. The Buccaneers could have put that game away if they were decided to become aggressive. But they weren't. They wanted to have the Falcons burn all their timeouts and try to pin the Falcons back. But all you need to do is kick a field goal to tie it. I'm starting to believe that Kirk Cousins has got confidence in this offense. Did you see that play when it was a 3rd and 14 and he threw it into triple coverage for a touchdown pass? Darnell Mooney had a great game. Drake London had a great game. He did get injured in that overtime. Kader Hodge with the walk-off game-winning touchdown as the Atlanta Falcons defeat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 36-30. I do want to say I'm sorry for Jay Rescher. He's a friend of the show. He's been on the show several times. He does sports talk radio down in Tampa for WDAD ESPN Radio. I know that you got to feel sick to your stomach about this. Because this was a great game, though. I mean, you've got to give credit to both teams. They're going to play each other in 3 weeks The Buccaneers will take on the Saints next week. The Falcons will take on the Carolina Panthers. But as for now, the Buccaneers and the Falcons are both 3-2, and the Falcons are in first place in the NFC South. See, it didn't take long for Kirk Cousins to figure out the offense. I love all the offensive pieces on the Atlanta Falcons. Just Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, even though I still at times think they should run the football more with Bijan and Tyler. But Kirk Cousins has got weapons everywhere. Kyle Pitts had some pretty good catches in today's game. My big concern for the Falcons is that the zero pressures in the first half, and Baker Mayfield could do whatever he wanted with the football, and he was shredding that defense. But the Falcons able to get the big win. This was absolutely huge for the team. And it was one of the most exciting games that I've seen, especially on a Thursday night. Sometimes we have some duds, but Thursday night football, I mean, I'm excited because, the 49ers play the Seahawks next week on Thursday night football. It's going to be great. All right, let's take a look at the other games for the NFL as we get ready for week 5 in the NFL. And let me tell you something. I'm excited. It's an understatement. But you look at just this week, we got a lot of great games. Let's start with the New York Jets and the Minnesota Vikings. They're going across the pond, and the Vikings are 4-0 on the season. Vikings are slightly favored. I think the Vikings win. The Vikings are going to win this game. They're going to go to 5-0. They might be the best team in the NFC. Carolina at Chicago. Carolina is just a different team with Andy Dalton, but Chicago, they're playing at home. I think that Caleb Williams is going to figure some things out. That quarterback matchup between Bryce Young and Caleb Williams, it's got to be kind of disappointing if you're a fan of both teams. But I do think Chicago wins because it's their defense that's going to bail them out. They are 2-2. So I think they win to go to 3-2. Baltimore at Cincinnati. I think Baltimore might be the best team in the AFC. And Cincinnati is struggling. They did pick up their first win, but I just don't think that they're the same team. Joe Burrow is just a shell of himself, the player that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Miami at New England. I think New England wins here because they're playing in Foxborough. And they got a decent defense. Miami is just struggling really bad. Cleveland at Washington. Jaden Daniels is looking like a phenomenon, just coming out of nowhere as this rookie sensation, could win Rookie of the Year. And the Washington Commanders are 3-1. I see them beating the Browns here because the Browns are terrible. I got Indianapolis beating Jacksonville on the road. I got Buffalo beating Houston. I think that Buffalo, after getting humiliated by Baltimore, they are the better team than the Houston Texans in my mind, even though that game is at Houston. Vegas and Denver, I think Bo Nix is going to win his third straight game on the season. Let me go and take that graphic down. Yeah. I was talking about all these games, and I had that graphic up. So I think Denver ends up winning there. Arizona at San Francisco. The 49ers struggle against Kyler Murray. There was a game where the 49ers lost to Arizona, and actually Colt McCoy was the quarterback. But I do think the 49ers end up defeating Arizona here, even though I think Arizona keeps it close because Kyler Murray is going to make plays on that Niners defense. Green Bay and the Rams. Rams are banged up. I think Green Bay is going to get a road win at SoFi Stadium. There might be more Packers fans than Rams fans at SoFi. Giants at Seattle. Seattle is just going to dominate the Giants. They're playing at home. They got to get ready for a short week, but 3-1. I think they go to 4-1, and they get ready for the 49ers on Thursday night. The Sunday night football game is the two most popular teams in the NFL, but it's probably the most disappointing game, Dallas and Pittsburgh. I actually think Pittsburgh wins because they are playing at home. And the Monday night football game is New Orleans and Kansas City. Detroit, Tennessee, Philadelphia, and the Los Angeles Chargers all on a bye. Let's go over to college football because we got two ranked teams in action tonight. Michigan State goes to Autzen Stadium to take on the Oregon Ducks. Now, this game is going to be on Fox tonight. And then on FS1, we got Syracuse taking on 25th ranked UNLV. Now, I got a bone to pick with UNLV and their talented quarterback, the Holy Cross transfer, Sluka, whatever his name is. He decided to quit because he didn't get his proper NIL deal. And immediately when that happened, I took UNLV out of that team that I think could make the college football playoff as a member of the group of five. Well, UNLV is going to play with a chip on their shoulder. They're going to feel a little backslided because they didn't get the invite into the Pac-12. I thought that UNLV would have got that invitation. They're going to stay in the Mountain West, but UNLV, Barry Odom, I mean, that's got to be the story. And, you know, I got to be honest, when I was a kid, I loved UNLV basketball. Paid a little bit of attention to UNLV football. Randall Cunningham played at UNLV. Ickey Woods played at UNLV. I knew a little bit about UNLV football, and Matt Williams played baseball at UNLV. So I was a fan of the school, University of Nevada at Las Vegas. I wanted to get some UNLV swag. I mean, it just so expensive when I was in school, but yeah, that's something that I would love to have because it really brought back retro the 90s with the UNLV running Rebels, and now with the football team doing so well, it's just nice to see that, you know, UNLV really needs to be good because they have the facilities, they have the resources. You know, it's in Vegas, it's Allegiant Stadium. I think it would be great for the sport if UNLV is decent at football. All right, I'm just going to run down the ranked teams, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the local teams. As the noon kickoff, Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt will be on the call in Happy Valley for UCLA Penn State. We got Missouri and Texas A&M. That's going to be the noon kickoff on ABC. You got SMU traveling to take on Louisville. The 3:30 CBS game is Iowa and Ohio State. Auburn and Georgia is the 3:30 game on ABC. I already previewed this game on Wednesday. It's Georgia's homecoming. Auburn got humiliated by Oklahoma. Georgia felt that they should have beat Alabama. I think Georgia's going to be out for blood, and they're going to demolish Auburn in this one-sided rivalry where Auburn has only beat them 3 times since 2006. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's been completely one-sided. Ole Miss and South Carolina. Ole Miss, after losing a disappointing game against Kentucky, do they get a road victory against South Carolina in a hostile environment? It's going to be a 3:30 kickoff, but you know they're going to play Sandstorm. You know those fans are going to get excited. And is that home crowd going to throw off Ole Miss, or does Ole Miss get back on the saddle and start becoming that college football playoff contender that everybody thought they were going to be? All right, Indiana having their best season in a long time. They're ranked 23rd, taking on Northwestern. I mean, they're 5-0, looking pretty good. Alabama at Vandy. You remember a couple of years ago when Vandy said, "We want Bama," and then they lost 59-0. Well, Vanderbilt, which, by the way, you know, they've beaten Virginia Tech. They have played Missouri close, but they did lose to Georgia State. I think this is going to be a blowout. This is going to be Jalen Milroe rushing for 3 rushing touchdowns, passing for 4 touchdowns. Jalen Milroe is just going to have a field day in this game. And I actually think that Ryan Williams is going to get some consideration for the Heisman Trophy. A 17-year-old freshman is going to get some consideration for the Heisman Trophy. This kid is absolutely special. I've never seen an Alabama wide receiver play at the level that Ryan Williams has played at. We've seen some talented freshmen. Devonta Smith in the national championship, Jalen Waddle. We've had Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Julio Jones. I mean, think about all the great wide receivers that played at Alabama. Ryan Williams may go down as the greatest Alabama wide receiver of all time, and he's only 17 years old. Incredible. Clemson at Florida State. Florida State might not even go to a bowl game. I'm sure they're missing Willie Taggart right now. I'm just kidding. No, but Mike Norvell, this is a train wreck. Absolute train wreck for the Florida State Seminoles. Utah State and Boise State. Hey, Utah State, future Pac-12 opponents. As Utah State getting an invite to the Pac-12 along with Boise State. Tennessee going to Fayetteville to take on Arkansas. Tennessee is quietly number 4 in the country. Do they continue winning as they get ready for that big showdown in Knoxville against Alabama in a couple weeks? Michigan and Washington, the rematch of the national championship game. Washington, not the same team. Michigan, they're starting to get their juju. They're trying to be. I'm not saying Juju Lewis is going to Michigan, okay? So don't. Speaking of which, former Michigan wide receiver Carmelo English is now on West Georgia. I looked that up. All right, USC at Minnesota. I think USC ends up winning here. Baylor, Iowa State. Iowa State's going to win. And now when I do my college football playoff projections every Monday after the AP poll comes out, I'm wondering if I should consider Iowa State as possibly winning the Big 12. I mean, I've gone from Oklahoma State. I've picked Utah. I picked BYU. Why not Iowa State? And then finally, the game late Saturday night, 10:30 in Berkeley. It's Miami at Cal. Boy, that's a long road trip for a conference game. But Miami is going to be taking on the California Golden Bears. They've met once. I want to say 2007 Emerald Bowl. Yeah, I do remember that. Cal, who beat Auburn, but they did lose to Florida State. 3-1 on the season. I'm not saying Miami's on upset alert, but I am actually saying that Miami is on upset alert. It's a tricky game because you're flying all the way to the West Coast to play a game, and Cal, I thought, was really decent, and they should have beat Florida State. And I also think that Miami kind of got a little lucky beating Virginia Tech. That was a game that they could have easily lost. All right. Let's go ahead and talk some high school football. As we did have a Thursday night game. One team in the Chattahoochee Valley just representing very well. And it was their homecoming. Just a big shout out to the LaGrange Grangers. As I try to get that graphic up. They are 5-2 on the season. They ended up getting the 42-14 win over Whitewater. Their defense stepped up. Malachi Fanning Render stepped up. And what a big win for the LaGrange Grangers on homecoming. And I think they were moving the schedule around because Callaway was on the road taking on West Side. But this game was actually in Macon. So there's not going to be a team that's going to be playing on a Friday night at Callaway Stadium because Troup County is actually on the road taking on Upson Lee. And, I'm just rehashing these graphics that I had on yesterday's show. I'm going to be at Kinnett Stadium for Carver and Shaw. You got Auburn and Central. This is the WRBL and WTVM game of the week. Pacelli at Calvary. Rex Castillo is going to be there for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Russell County is on the road taking on Stanhope Elmore. We've got Dadeville is taking on Lee Scott. Northside is taking on Mundy's Mill. They are 3-2. I said on the show yesterday that they were 3-3. I apologize for that. They are 3-2. And also Randolph County is 5-0. I had them down as 4-0. So I wanted to make the correction here on this show. Spencer on the road taking on Sumter County. That's going to be a big game. Jordan is taking on Kendrick down at Otis Spencer. Manchester at Bowden, a rematch of the state title game. Harris County is hosting Griffin. You got Smith Station on the road taking on Jag. Chaco is taking on Central Talbotton. Dadeville is on the road taking on Lee Scott. Don't forget that Thrip Erring and I will have our GIAA scoreboard show tonight, 11 o'clock. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be awesome. All right. Moving along, we did have some volleyball action. It was the region tournament for the Muskogee County schools in 2A. Columbus ends up beating Shaw in 3 sets. Carver beats Jordan in 4 sets, 3-1. Sumter County ends up beating Kendrick in 5 sets, 3-2. And with that being said, and Spencer beats Hardaway in 5 sets. So Spencer is going to take on Sumter County on October the 8th. Carver is going to take on Columbus on October the 8th. All 4 teams are going to be in the playoffs, so that's good. Calvary Christian ends up defeating Mount DeSales Academy in 3 sets. I was on the call for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. The softball games, Columbus over Hardaway, 13-1. Shaw ends up defeating Carver 18-0. Sumter County ends up defeating Jordan 11-3. You also had Harris County end up defeating Stars Mill, so that was a big win for Harris County as they are 20-2 overall. And then I'm trying to get the score update for the Northside Patriots softball team because they were on the road taking on Jonesboro, and they got the 18-2 win. They are 24-2 overall, 8-1 in 4A Region 3, and they will take on Columbus today at Randy Jordan Field at 5:30. And I got to tell you, I mean, we have our quadruple header on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I seriously, strongly considered live streaming this game because I want to see Northside and Columbus face off against each other. But we will try to get them in the playoffs. Columbus is going to be hosting a regional. Northside is going to be hosting maybe the regionals and possibly the super regionals as both teams try to make a push to try to get to the state playoffs. All right. So I talked about the college football rankings, some of the top 25 games in action. Georgia Tech is hosting Duke. Duke is 5-0. How about Manny Diaz? The job that he's doing at Duke. And Georgia Tech, I think Georgia Tech's going to win. They're playing at home. Georgia State and Georgia Southern both on a bye. We got a rare Friday night game at Fifth Third Bank Stadium as Kennesaw State is hosting Jacksonville State. And West Georgia, I've mentioned West Georgia. They are taking on, they're taking on Austin Peay. There you go. Remember, they have the former Central Red Devil wide receiver Carmelo English, who's on the West Georgia Wolves, as they did win their first game of the season, but since then they've lost 2 straight. LaGrange College, after getting their first win in over 2 years, they are going to be hosting Maryville College out of Tennessee. And the kickoff's going to be at 1 o'clock at Callaway Stadium, as you can catch that game on Panther Live. And I always enjoy watching LaGrange college football because it's the closest thing we'll get to local college football, unless I'll make the exception because we also have the Tuskegee Morehouse Classic that's going to be at A.J. McClung Memorial Stadium this Saturday. The parade is going to be at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're also going to have tailgating, and it's going to be a great event. We have the press conference next week for the Midtown Showdown. That's going to be a big event because they're going to start tailgating at Otis Spencer Stadium next week for the Midtown Showdown between Hardaway and Columbus. There's just so much sporting events to get into. I can't get to it all, but I do want to talk about the baseball playoffs. The Mets do beat the Brewers in the winner take all game in Game 3, and the Mets will take on the Philadelphia Phillies in the divisional round. The other matchup is the Padres and the Dodgers. Quite frankly, there is not any likable teams in the National League anymore for me. I don't know who I would root for. I guess I would root for the Padres, but I don't like the Phillies. I don't like the Mets, and I don't like the Dodgers. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and root for the Padres. Over in the American League, Yankees and Royals, and you have the Tigers and the Guardians. If the Yankees don't make it to the World Series, this is a failure. Like the dad from Step Brothers. Failure. Sorry, I had to do that. All right, well, without further ado, I want to try to get this done. This is my NBA preview show. Let me tell you something. I love the NBA. I've always loved the NBA as a kid. My teams were, everybody was rooting for the Chicago Bulls when I was in high school. But I rooted for the Bulls, but I also rooted for the Orlando Magic because I like Shaq and Penny. I rooted for the Charlotte Hornets because I like Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning. I rooted for the Milwaukee Bucks because I liked Glenn Robinson, Vin Baker, and Sam Cassell. I rooted for the Memphis Grizzlies because I briefly lived in Memphis. And, of course, you got to root for the local teams. The Golden State Warriors were my team growing up as a kid. When I moved to Sacramento, I rooted for the Sacramento Kings, the greatest show on court from 97 to 2005. And when I moved to Atlanta in 2006, I rooted for the Atlanta Hawks. So without further ado, let's look at my NBA predictions. I hope you like it. Okay, so basically, these are the 10 teams that will at least make the play-in tournament. And I do break it down on here. So my big thing about the NBA, a lot of changes this year. Paul George is now on the Sixers. The Knicks ended up trading for Karl Anthony Towns. You got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on the Orlando Magic. Josh Giddey is now on the Chicago Bulls. You got OKC with a great defender in Alex Caruso. The Sacramento Kings have DeMar DeRozan. I still think Chicago is a 10th seed. Even without the offensive firepower of DeMar DeRozan, Chicago is going to be good because the health of Lonzo Ball. If Lonzo Ball's back, I think that the Chicago Bulls are going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. Don't count out the Charlotte Hornets because LaMelo Ball is a very good player as well. And some of these rookies are going to make an impact. I think that Zachary Rieseschur is going to be a borderline all-star for the Atlanta Hawks. I think that Alex Sarr for the Washington Wizards is going to be a bust. I think that Reed Shepherd is going to be that shooter that Houston needs. And that's why I got Houston as a team that sneaks into the play-in tournament. I do think that San Antonio will be the most improved team. They'll be a borderline playoff team because of the addition of Chris Paul. But I do think their young guards, Rob Dillingham and Stephon Castle, are going to be complementary pieces to Victor Wembanyama. So let's look at what I think is going to happen in the play-in tournament. I think that the Clippers ends up beating New Orleans. Houston, getting the big upset, ends up defeating Sacramento. So Clippers will get the number 7 seed. You got New Orleans and Houston battling for the number 8 seed. And I think the New Orleans Pelicans, with the addition of DeJounte Murray, they are going to get the number 8 seed. Over in the Eastern Conference, Indiana is going to be amazing. Remember, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Tyrese Halliburton, you got Benedict Mathurin, you got Pascal Siakam. This team is loaded, and I got them beating the Hawks. Hawks are going to be the 8th seed. I seriously think that Trae Young is going to have better numbers now that DeJounte Murray is not there anymore. I do think that Jalen Johnson just continues to improve. Zachary Rieseschur is going to be a very special player. And I do think that I personally feel that they need to get more involved with their rim protectors. But I do think that the Atlanta Hawks, I think Bogdanovic, now that DeJounte Murray's out of town, Bogey can actually just go off and just shoot the lights out of the ball. But I do have them beating the Orlando Magic to get the number 8 seed. The Magic, which I think with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, I think that the Orlando Magic, I really want to see Anthony Black just be a better player. I mean, he didn't really pan out as a rookie. They did get Tristan da Silva from Colorado. But, Orlando is, like they were a playoff team last year. I think that they're a borderline playoff team this year. I got them losing to the Hawks, and the Hawks end up getting the number 8 seed, which means that I'm talking about the Western Conference now. So Denver is going to beat New Orleans. Dallas is going to sweep the Clippers. I mean, come on, Clippers without Paul George, without Russell Westbrook. By the way, Russell Westbrook's on the Denver Nuggets. That's a great bench player. I'm not saying that Denver's going to lose some of that defensive spark, losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but you got Russell Westbrook off the bench. I actually think that's fantastic. Too much firepower for Dallas. Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, and you also Derek Lively. I mean, they've got some ballers on their team. The Clippers, I like Terrence Mann. I hope they ease his pain, but I think that Dallas ends up sweeping the Clippers. We're going to have some incredible series. I think that Phoenix ends up defeating OKC in 7. And I think that the Phoenix Suns, as a number 6 seed, gets to the second round. I think that Mike Budenholzer might be coach of the year. But, if you look at their record, they still don't have a deep bench, but they have 3 superstars. And this is really going to be the last ride, because I don't know if KD sticks around if Phoenix is not winning a title. This will be my shocker that the Lakers end up beating the Minnesota Timberwolves in the playoffs, beats them in 7. This is a really big hot take. I'm not saying I'm a believer in JJ Redick. I just think that all the pieces will fall into place for the Lakers. The fact they don't have to play the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs, a healthy AD, a healthy LeBron, they will figure it out. And I do think that Dalton Knecht is going to be a very good rookie. I don't know how many minutes Bronny James gets, or if he even makes the 12-man roster. I think that he gets an invite to preseason and he makes the 15-man roster, but I do think he's going to spend the majority of his time in the G League. I'm going to say Bronny James has about 12 games. He is going to be a rotation guy off the bench. If the Lakers are blowing out a team, you're going to see Bronny James in there the last 20 seconds of the fourth quarter, and the Lakers are already up by 30. I really think what we are going to see is the history. We're going to have our eyes on those preseason games because Bronny and LeBron are going to be playing side by side in the preseason, and that is what's going to draw everybody to the TV screen, is to see that. But I don't think Bronny James is going to have an impact in the NBA. I do think the Lakers are going to shock some people. Look, I'm not a fan of Rob Pelinka. I think he's just a glorified agent. I did not like the hire of JJ Redick, but Redick is a smart guy, and LeBron trusts him. And I think that he is going to figure it out. And if Anthony Davis was remotely close to what he was during the Olympics, I think that the Lakers will be the surprise team in the playoffs. All right, let's move on to the Eastern Conference, where I do have the Hawks winning 2 games against the best team in basketball, the Boston Celtics. Remember 2008, they did this? They pushed Boston to 7 games. Zaza Pachulia with the game 7. So the Atlanta Hawks are going to get some wins at home. My big thing is I don't think they win game 6. I think that Boston beats Atlanta at State Farm Arena in game 6 because Boston just wants to try to close it out. They don't want to get it to a game 7. But the Hawks are going to be very tough at home. I think they go down 0-2, or even if they split 1-1, I think it's going to be 2-2 going to Boston for game 5. The Atlanta Hawks are going to surprise a lot of people this year. I'm not saying that they're going to be an Eastern Conference Finals team. You got to remember, that was just a flash in the pants. That's because the Sixers couldn't get it out of their own way, and the Knicks were hobbled, and the Hawks just took advantage of some injuries. And, I thought they could have beat Milwaukee, but Trae Young got hurt. All right. Philadelphia and Indiana. I think that Philadelphia might be the most improved team in the NBA with the addition of Paul George. But you also have Tyrese Maxey. You also have Joel Embiid. Although Joel Embiid didn't have a really good Olympics, but Joel Embiid is going to be one of the top players in the NBA. I don't think he's going to be MVP because I do think that Paul George and Tyrese Maxey are going to be the 1 and the 2 in Philly. And I love Nick Nurse as a head coach. Taking the Toronto Raptors and leading them to an NBA title in 2019 was incredible. And I think that Nick Nurse is going to get the Sixers to the promised land, and they could be a title contender. New York, with the addition of Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, you got Mikal Bridges. I think New York is for real. I just think the East is stacked. They're going to be really top heavy with the 2 top teams, Boston and Philly. New York is going to be right there. That series against Miami is going to be fascinating. Look at all the series in the Eastern Conference. The margin of victory, look at the margin of error between all these teams that could go either way. But the Miami Heat, the big question is the health of Jimmy Butler. If Jimmy Butler is healthy, I could see the Miami Heat beating the Knicks. I mean, I honestly believe that, with all my might, is that Jimmy Butler, who averages 22 points a game in the regular season, becomes playoff Butler and averages 26 points a game in the postseason. Cleveland and Milwaukee, it doesn't really matter who wins this series. They're going to get swept by Boston. Cleveland, I think that they find a way to win. Milwaukee, with Damian Lillard and Giannis, I mean, why did you get rid of Drew Holiday? That was not a very good move because Damian Lillard is not Drew Holiday and he doesn't play defense. Second round predictions. Well, the Lakers just can't get out of their own way against the Denver Nuggets, and they lose once again to the Nuggets, but that doesn't necessarily mean that J.J. Redick is going to be on the hot seat. But you look at how the Lakers treated Darvin Ham after the playoff exits to the Denver Nuggets. If the Nuggets weren't the Lakers' opponent, I think that Darvin Ham still has a job. And I think that Dallas is just going to be too much for Phoenix. That story about them beating OKC, a very exhausting 7-game series, they're going to run out of juice, and Dallas is going to end up sweeping them. That's going to set up for a nice Western Conference final. All right, the Eastern Conference second round. I did say that Boston is – I thought they were going to sweep Cleveland. I actually have them beating them in 5. Yeah, just give Cleveland 1 game at Cleveland. And then the Sixers beating the Knicks, and this could go either way. I mean, I think this is going to be a classic second-round series between 2 rivals that just can't stand each other. Western Conference Finals and Eastern Conference Finals. I got Denver beating Dallas in 7. I got Boston beating Philly in 7. I'm telling you, the margin of victory between all these teams are razor thin. But Boston has been there, and they have their entire team back from last year that won a championship. The only difference is Al Horford is getting up there in age. I don't know if this is going to be his last year. Denver doesn't have KCP, but they do have Russell Westbrook, which means Russell Westbrook's going to have an NBA Finals appearance? What? I got Boston beating Denver in 7. I mean, how many times has an NBA Finals gone 7? I mean, we love it anytime it happens. Well, the Boston Celtics, back-to-back champions, we're starting to see a dynasty. Joe Mazzulla starting to become, that coach where you think, well, maybe he actually is a good coach. And with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, which, by the way, he is going to be back mid-season. So when I was talking about the Boston being the number 1 seed, that it doesn't matter that Kristaps Porzingis is not going to be in the lineup for half the season, because I still think Boston is going to be that much more talented than everybody else. I mean, look, they got Derek White. They've got Al Horford. I mean, they got superstars everywhere. Yeah. Derek White is a very underrated player. He might end up getting a second team All NBA. I don't say first team All NBA because that's very difficult to do, especially when you got LeBron and KD and Giannis and Nikola Jokic. But the NBA, I love it. I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. At times, I wish I had a NBA League Pass, but yeah, that's my prediction for the 2024-2025 NBA season. I'm hoping that the Hawks do well, and I'll keep an eye on them. I'll cover them on this show. I've had Steve Holman on the show. Thrift and I had Mike Conti on the show last year previewing the Hawks season. I've had Caleb Johnson on the show. So we have the experts that cover the Atlanta Hawks, and I'd love to get them all on the show. Well, that's going to do it for me. I want to thank everybody who has downloaded the show and subscribed to the YouTube channel on this Friday. I hope everybody enjoys the games out there, and we will see you next week. Everybody out there, have a great weekend, and we will see you next time.